Good morning. So this morning we're going to take a little detour and we're going to talk about something a little off topic, but not really if you think about it. We're going to talk about the connection between what you eat and how you feel, your nutrition and your brain, your psychology. And I'm going to talk about this from my own perspective and how when I changed my diet, I felt better in many different ways. I'm not going to tell you what the ultimate diet is for you because really that's between you and your body and your doctor. But I am going to tell you what worked for me and where I got my inspiration for changing things to make things a whole lot better. So 15 years ago, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am. I was eating a whole lot of food that I thought was really good for me because what I was doing was I was following this advice that I was supposed to be eating lots of fiber and lots of fruit and vegetables and some meat, some fish, but mostly lots and lots of grains and fruit, because those were things that I thought were particularly healthy. And I knew vegetables were healthy, but I thought if I eat enough fruit, it'll kind of make up for the fact that I'm not eating as many vegetables. Well, so I was going along like this, and it worked until my mid-30s. And somewhere in my mid-30s, things started to change. My body chemistry changed, and I started putting on weight. And so I was still eating this diet that I'd been eating for a long time and considering a very healthy diet, because it was better than much of the junk food that a lot of my friends were eating. And I was getting some exercise and, felt really good about that. But like I say, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am today, which wasn't making me really happy because it was a lot heavier than I was when I graduated from college. And I think every guy kind of likes to have that as a benchmark of, that was a healthy point in time, perhaps in their early 20s. And would like to be able to say that they were still at that point. Well, I wasn't anywhere near that. So I think that the turning point came when, like I said, I was about 37 years old. It was about 15 years ago. I suddenly started having heart palpitations and anxiety about stuff, a little bit of depression, and just overall not feeling very well, not feeling good about the way that I looked, about my health in general. And I went to the doctor and had a checkup, and suddenly I realized, and he was explaining this to me, that I wasn't in very good shape. He explained to me, I was a little heavy, which I kind of knew, but I was in a little bit of denial over that. But he also explained to me that I had high blood sugar, I had high blood pressure, and I knew I had the heart palpitations. He also said that I had high cholesterol, which was really surprising to me because of all of this grain, this fiber that I was eating. And so anyway, he was ready to put me on medication. He wanted to put me on pre-diabetes medication and cholesterol medication and something that would bring down my blood pressure. So I was going from this point of feeling like I was really healthy to suddenly getting slammed with this news that I just wasn't as healthy as I thought. And so he proposed this to me, and I was like, whoa, hang on a second. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job with my diet, but maybe there's something going on here, and I would like a chance to try and see if I can sort this out for myself before we just go straight to medication. And so I went back home and I started researching diets that were, focused on health. And so new diets around that time, which we're talking about 15 years ago. And there was a book, which I do not recommend, but I'm going to tell you about because I started following this diet. And it helped to a certain extent. It actually did clear up a lot of my problems, but there are certain other problems that I'll explain to you afterwards about this diet. But it's a book called Eat to Live. It's by Joel Fuhrman, and overall it's pretty good advice, but it really pushes for a vegan diet and a zero fat, zero salt diet, which when you have plenty of extra weight, that's kind of okay because you've got fat to burn. And so while you're eating no fat, the fat that you're burning is contributing to your overall health as you burn through it. The problem is it's not sustainable once you are healthy again. And so that was what I ended up running into is once I had, so this diet, the result was I went on this diet, the Eat to Live diet, and 6 months later I go back to my doctor and he says, "Oh my God, you have changed all of these numbers and you've gone from a pretty average to not so great patient to being one of the very healthiest in terms of just raw data patients that I have. My blood pressure, my cholesterol, my blood sugar were all way, 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 way down into the very super healthy range, which was awesome. And I had lost that 30 pounds. So now I was really at my ideal weight. Everything was terrific. And so he slapped me on the back, said, "This is great," sent me on my way. And I continued along with this Eat to Live diet for a while. The problem was, as time went by, I started to develop other issues where I just wasn't feeling that great in terms of my memory, my ability to retain information, to focus on things. And what I now know, and so I backed off the diet a little bit and kind of went back to something a little bit more moderate, but keeping in mind all of the things that I'd learned from that book about low fat and eating lots and lots of vegetables. And once again, he was also pushing fruit, vegetables, but his suggestion is back way off from the grain, which I think is a good suggestion. So it was a vegan diet with very, very minimal, if any, grain in the diet. And so what you're really eating is lots of dark green vegetables, lots of salads. If you're eating any fat, you're eating olive oil. If you're eating any meat, you're really only eating it in portions of perhaps 2 ounces at a time. So very small portions of meat. And I don't really disagree with him overall about that, but he had you eating super, super lean meat. And really, really discouraging anything with fat in it. And anything with salt in it. Now the problem here is that the only way to live without salt in your regular diet is to eat things that have salts in them, because your body requires salt. And your body actually requires a good deal of salt, especially if you're exercising and sweating. So if you have any kind of exercise routine where you're perspiring, your body is perspiring salt. And unless you're taking in that salt, your body can't make salt. You have to take in a certain amount of salt. So a zero salt diet is really not that good, especially if you are exercising. Now, the amount of salt that people eat when they're eating junk food diets, that's way over the top. But there is, I think if you do research, and I have researched this myself, if you do research, you will be very hard pressed to find any actual scientific study that proves that there is a problem with consuming salt. In fact, there's a Scientific American article that I read many years back when I was researching this that actually says that the Scientific American, the article suggested that we stop the war on salt and that it was based on bad science, that there's never really been any science that has been proven to back up this salt myth. It was started in the 1970s when people realized that it logically made sense that more salt in your diet would increase your blood pressure, but it turns out it's just not true when you're eating a moderate amount of salt, meaning put as much salt as you want on a diet that's full of very healthy food. And so it's a lot of other things that contribute to heart disease other than salt that tend to go with foods that you consume that have lots of salt in them. But when you extract salt, and if you continued with eating those same foods without salt, you would have the same problems, because many of them are high in really unhealthy fats, high in really unhealthy carbohydrates, and high in sugars, refined sugars especially. So the salt really isn't just it's not the major contributing factor to that. It just happens to go with those foods. It happens to be in a lot of those foods, but it's not really the active ingredient in bad health. So aside from that, he also wants you to stay on, Joel Fuhrman wants you to stay on this really super low fat diet. But the problem is your brain feeds on fat. Your brain is mostly fat. And when you've lost a lot of weight and then you continue depriving your body of fat, what your body does is it starts to have to really use some of the fat in your brain to function. Your brain starts using its own fat to power itself. It's not a healthy situation to be in, so you actually need healthy fats. Now, there's a big difference between healthy and unhealthy fats. So what I read more recently, a book that I would recommend, although I only recommend it because the author takes himself with a grain of salt. He takes the science with a grain of salt, and he says, look, science is constantly changing. You need to keep up with it. What I'm telling you today may be obsolete tomorrow, but this is what the studies say today. The author's name is Max Lugavere, and the book is called Genius Foods. And what he suggests is a diet that's much more close to a ketogenic diet. He doesn't push the ketogenic diet too hard, but he does say that he is on a ketogenic diet. Personally, I find that far too restrictive, and everybody has to cheat sometimes and have something that has carbohydrates in it, and have something that, have a glass of wine, have a glass of beer, and if you can live without them, that's wonderful. But for me, that's impossible. However, I can stay pretty close to that diet, give myself a few days off, and keep myself feeling really great. And so the one thing you have to be careful of when you get closer to a ketogenic diet is that you're not eating crappy meat too much, because meat is only as good as the pasture it was raised in, and if it was raised in a feedlot, it's just not that good for you, and you really need to not eat a whole lot of that kind of meat. It also suggests eating fish, and fish is great, but these days a lot of fish has mercury in it and other metals, so if you eat too much fish, you can be filling your body with things that just aren't really good for you, as kind of accidentally. They wouldn't have been in the fish if you were eating it 100 years ago, but right now, eating fish is a little bit, too much fish can be a little bit dangerous. You're at the top of the food pyramid, you're bioaccumulating these toxins, and so you have to be a little careful of that. It also suggests eating lots of avocados, eating lots of olive oil, eating other sorts of oils and fats that are healthy for you and are healthy for your brain. So that's really the balance that I feel like I have found at this point, but your balance could be a little different. See, my balance is lots of vegetables, some healthy meats, some fish, lots of vegetables, and oils that are healthy oils, and things like avocados, things like berries, and a whole lot less fruit and almost no grain. I won't say I'm entirely off grain, because I do have rice sometimes, and I do sneak in a pastry every once in a while too. But that's more the exception than the rule. And I feel it. This is one of the really interesting things, is once you get on a strict diet where you are closer to either the ketogenic diet or something like that, or the Mediterranean diet even, once you get to keeping yourself on one of those diets, you feel different. And if you go off of it for a couple of days, you go back to how you were feeling before, and it's a little bit of a sort of a relapse, into the way you felt before, and suddenly you realize how bad you used to feel and how good you feel in comparison. And it can be hard to get back to being on that diet, which makes you feel good, but it's very important to get back to it. But still, you need to blow off steam every once in a while. Everybody needs to have a beer. Everybody needs to relax and kick back with a glass of wine. So you just need to have a certain amount of willpower, at least I do, to get myself back to where I know that I should be. And so this has been my experience with my diet. And those are the two books that I would say were the most influential in terms of sort of forming the diet that I'm on today, which 15 years later, I'm in my early 50s at this point, I am in better health. My weight is under control and has been for some time, and I just overall feel so much better than I did when I was 37, and it's pretty amazing. So you don't need to age as quickly if you pay attention to how you feel, pay attention to your diet, do some reading, and test what works for you. I would say take a look at these books that I'm talking about, but don't necessarily stop there. Think about what it is that works for you and what it is that works for your body. Try some things, try some diets, and also remember that the diet that works for you when you are overweight is not your maintenance diet. They're two different things. And so if you keep trying to stay on this diet that got you down to the weight that you want to be at, you may start to have other effects from that, like this cutting back on fat to lose fat, which is a legitimate strategy to lose fat. It can eventually, once you have burned through all that fat and you just don't have it there to help power your brain, then you can start to feel a little out of it and start to wonder why. Why is this happening? Why am I not sleeping well? What is it that's affecting me? And it quite often it is the food. Now I will leave you with one last thought, and that is the one thing that I know, the one food that I know that has a really strong effect on my mood. And this may or may not work for you, but when I am feeling out of sorts, when I am feeling depressed, when I am feeling just like the world is just too heavy, I eat a lot of spinach. And it sounds funny. It's like Popeye food, right? So I just will go and get a bag of spinach out of the freezer and eat at least half a bag of spinach, maybe even the entire bag. And by the time I am done eating that bag of spinach, I often forget why I started eating that bag of spinach, because I feel so much better. It changes my emotional state to eat spinach. Now, I don't know if this will work for you, but it works for me. So that is my magic food of the day. And just wanted to let you know about that so that you can hopefully try it out. If you happen to be feeling down someday, I want to know if this works for you, because like I say, it works for me, but I don't have any scientific proof that it works for other people. So if you're feeling low, I would like you to do this experiment. Get some spinach out of the freezer, cook it up, saute it without any oil, and then add some olive oil afterwards, a tablespoon or two of olive oil afterwards. And stir it up with a little salt, and just eat that spinach and see how you feel 30 minutes later. And if you feel, I'd love it if you would comment below. Let me know if this helps you too, because it helps me, and I'm just really curious. I've tried it a number of times, and it just always seems to work. So half, 3/4 of a bag of spinach. See if that works for you. Let me know. Please leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button today and take a look at foodforestgardenclub.org. We're getting together, we're talking about food, we're talking about the food that we're growing and the food that we'd like to grow in our gardens and all of that. So it's a great place to be. We do Zoom chats. We do also other kinds of chats and forums and stuff like that. So please check it out. And you can contact me using the contact form on the foodforestgardenclub.org website. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day.